Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
Good evening, friends. Tonight, this episode of Zoom into Wine is brought to you by Learn About Wine, my other website. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We Zoom every Wednesday night at Zoom into Wine, and we love finding new friends, so please tell your friends about us. The wines can be delivered in these very cool little 2-ounce jars, or you can purchase the full bottle kits to join us, and we can ship these anywhere in the U.S. that's legal. Tonight we're going to be talking about Brunello di Montalcino and the area known as Montalcino, part of Tuscany, part of Italy. The further inland in Tuscany, we have the famous wine that built the Tuscan Empire, the wines of Chianti. As we go closer to the ocean, we get a little bit more undulating hills. We hit Montalcino with more volcanic activity, different soil types, and the grape known as Sangiovese all of a sudden transforms, becomes a little bit thicker skin, and it has a little different personality. Sangiovese Grosso, 100% grown in Montalcino, a really special spot. I've been there on a number of occasions. In fact, I visited a couple of the brands that we're tasting tonight and have had some really amazing experiences with these wines. This category is very interesting because there's also a number of Italian wine laws that protect the idea of Brunello di Montalcino. It's the wine has to be at the winery for 5 years. Now, many wineries release their wine or younger wine known as El Rosso di Montalcino, and that can be sold, I believe it's 2 years at the winery, so it can be served a little bit sooner. And I think right now we're seeing 2019 Rossos being imported into America, whereas the current vintage of Brunello is 2017. 16. And so that's 5 years, and that's the equation. Now, obviously, the money in this area is in the higher end wine. And this is a very attractive thing. And when you look at the world of wine and what wines are selling for a good amount of money, Brunello di Montalcino is one of the market leaders. It has the highest average price point of any wine on the planet. Of course, we all think, oh, wait, there's Bordeaux's that sell for thousands of dollars. How can that be? Or Burgundies that sell for thousands of dollars. But that's a very small percentage of those wines, whereas almost all Brunello wines sell for a very, very good price point. And so that has attracted hedge fund money to invest in this region, and so the region's been under some pressure, and some families have sold, but the historic families, the big properties, I mean, there's some really big properties here that have been passed on for generations, and so the business of Brunello di Montalcino is in very good shape, and the producers that own these vineyards are doing quite well, and they've just come off of an incredible run. And so tonight I thought we'd take a look at a 3 vintage span, see how the wines are a little bit different as the vintages kind of undulate a little bit. But usually in a 10-year period, there's 2 or 3 great vintages. And what I'd like to do is just kind of rattle off a couple of great vintages over the history. I think a lot of people got involved in Brunello di Montalcino in the 1997 great vintage, and that kind of shook things up and got people rolling. We had vintages like 01, 04, some really nice 06, 07 action, 9 and 10 were really amazing. But there were good wines made in the other vintages. This is such a press-driven thing. But it's also driven by the conditions. I mean, there's just no doubt. Some vintages, you're going to have hail. You're going to have warmer vintages or drought-driven vintages. And certain things happen in the cycle. And 15 and 16 played really perfectly into what makes a great Brunello di Montalcino. Slightly different elements, but and different kind of way things kind of got stacked together. But the wines are incredible. But as I'm tasting 15s and 16s and getting presented the opportunity to buy 15s and 16s, because their business models kind of got thrown off track. This COVID thing shut down a lot of restaurants. They sold a lot of Brunello di Montalcino to the restaurants. And obviously, when you go into a situation like a pandemic, you're not necessarily thinking $75 a bottle as your daily drinker. So the higher end wines suffered a little bit, and there was a good amount of wine because they just started selling the 15s when the pandemic came, and the 16s right behind it, and everybody was banking on these. And I will tell you that I think all of those producers are probably in pretty good shape, but the importers themselves are like, oh crap, we own thousands of these cases and we bought them at high price points, and they're being pushed into the marketplace and keeping prices nice and tight. Otherwise, these wines should be closer to $100 a bottle, and that's where they were going and where they were projected to go with the quality that they have. So Ben, let's back up now and go into our PowerPoint, and welcome everybody that's joining us tonight. I want to thank you guys for being here. I hope you guys have a good time, and we will get into some conversation with our crowd in just a minute. But let's get some wine in the glass, which requires me to get into this PowerPoint and get past the first couple of slides. So here are our three wines that we're tasting tonight. On our initial setup of the event, we ordered the Ragnaya VA Vine, and when it showed up, it's a Rosso di Montalcino because they declassified almost all of their Brunello di Montalcino and their old vine vineyards into the Rosso. So really significant Rosso that you're going to try tonight, and it's a beautiful wine at a beautiful price. Then we're going to try the 15 Silvionardi Brunello di Montalcino, a heralded wine, great vintage. And then the 16 will finish up our show tonight. When we look at the map of Tuscany, many of you, if you want to come with me, I'll invite you right now and let you know that I am going to Italy, God willing and COVID allowing. There's been some buzz in this week about the EU restricting flights, but on further investigation, it looks like what they're going to do is make it vaccination only to travel to Italy. Italy is so dependent on tourism. It just would not even make sense for them to shut down unless this variant became a bigger issue. But they're over 60% vaccinated in northern Italy, and some of the highest vaccination rates in Europe. And so if you are vaccinated, please consider coming with us. We're going to go to Florence. We're going to hit in Florence, and that's where a lot of people visit. We got a couple of days in Florence, and then we're going to tool around Chianti. We're going to hang out with Dario Cecchini, the famous butcher, and that'll be on Monday. And then Tuesday, we're going to head out to the Montalcino area, and we're going to see some famous producers. Then we'll head on Wednesday to Montepulciano and make that it's all satelliting back and forth to Florence. Hour and a half about is the drive outward here. And then Thursday, our final day, we're going to head to this area over here, and we're going to be heading, actually I missed my arrow, we're going to go here, Bulgari, and we're going to be heading over to Ornellaia and Sassicaia and checking out the new facility known as Maceto. Anyway, that's our trip. It's all very doable, very fun. Airport next to Florence, 20 minutes away, and it's a really nice package if you want to join us. The Brunello wines that we're tasting tonight. We're not going to be visiting any of these producers because I have visited these folks before, and I always like to visit new folks. And we have an amazing lineup on the website. You can check it out. All right. So just a little bit more of a look at all the different wines that are made in Tuscany. The Etruscans are very proud of their Tuscan heritage. It's, of course, steeped in history and winemaking. And this area that we're visiting, the Brunello wines, the laws have been kind of chasing this area for a while. It's, the Italians aren't exactly always the most law-abiding. You have to produce some pretty good laws for them to follow along. But in general, Brunello's been pretty unfettered. A couple of incidents in the last couple of years. Some guys sneaking in some trucks full of wine from other areas trying to call it Brunello because it does fetch such a good price point. But here's a little look at the vintages. Enthusiast talks about the 14 vintage as one of the coolest and wettest. And that's kind of what it was. It just did not get the same sort of weather pattern in 14. And you can see that in Bordeaux. You can see that in much of Europe. It was a cooler wine vintage, but it made very classic vintages because Europe's not known for always having hot years. And it's the hot years that kind of get exciting wines, which is kind of interesting. 15 and 16, you can duke it out in battle and say which one is the best vintage of all time. Of course, when you say all time, it's because we're making better wine every year. We're bringing, there's fewer and fewer grandparents making the wines and more doctorates that have graduated from wine school. It's not grandpa's recipe anymore. And that's what's really been elevating the game. The use of better technology in the vineyards, less intervention in the vineyards, kind of a return to primitive times where we used flowers and butterflies and ladybugs and balanced horticulture. And that's kind of why wines have elevated to the next great level. And we're able to even make really beautiful wines in difficult times. 14 just did not have the stuff of greatness. And so great brands took their great vineyards and they declassified. In Burgundy, they would call it repli. They would rappel down the quality. So they're taking $200 wines that, if it was a good vintage, the wine would get $200, and they're blending them into the simpler wine. And this is just really, first of all, La Reynaille is a really tough brand to get a hold of. It's highly thought of, very collectible, very expensive, cherished by the importer. They kind of spoon it out, rewarding you for your good buying habits. And so I was very, very stoked to be able to get some. I don't care what vintage it is. I'm going to trust it. Now, I have other 14s on the website, and I'm going to be a big advocate for 14 because I'm kind of a guy who likes wines that are maybe, not obvious champions, because that's my job. I got to find the less obvious champions. And I will put this forward. First of all, the brand. The brand is amazingly dependable. They are making wines that are done in a very low extraction model. In fact, I would say tonight's tasting in general are of classic Brunello de Montalcino producers, not the hyper extracted extreme ones that go for the uber ripe characteristics that would really be punished in a vintage like 14. So, Anthony Galloni says virtually anything that gets bottled at this winery is a standout wine. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I want to pay attention to here. Great producers can make very good wine in difficult vintages. Check out that view. Come on. If you can't make wine from that view right there, then you've got some problems. And they just have an incredible ecosystem that they keep alive here. Everything's done organically. That's been their plight for a long time, their path, their ethos. And this is just one of those producers that just is iconic. And they aren't the most well known because look at the size of the place. It's pretty small. And the wines go for a good amount of money because they take a lot of time to make them, a lot of handwork, and it's all about the selection here. Winemaking staff has been with them for a long time, since '02. Still a young guy, but very highly respected. Riccardo Camponiti. I hope I did that okay. But gentle extraction. I don't care what vintage you're making. This guy, in a vintage like 15 and 16, these wines are punishingly tannic. In a vintage like 14 that we're going to have tonight, which I have in the glass now, and you can see, swirl, smell now, taste it up. Oh, it just is absolutely bullseye smell of Brunello, of Montalcino, of Sangiovese, and it is so pure and so, such a high selection here. And there's still some rockin' tannins there, but because there's so much kind of coaxed up fruit there, we're talking about old vines, vineyards that are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And that's why this wine is our beginning point of the evening time and our first look at the category. It is mountainous Sangiovese Grosso, a little bit more thicker skin, a little more powerful than your average Chianti. Chianti, I defend Chianti as well. They're up in their game to compete and find a path to greatness as well, because Chianti got run over by commercialism, and now they're making wines known as Gran Selezione, and they're making these beautiful efforts to compete with wines like Brunello de Montalcino. And I hope you agree that the 14 is a great starting spot. Let's talk to our group that's on the Zoom tonight. Say hi and say hello. Stacy Kincaid, I see you just clicked in there. Haven't seen your face in 2 years. So good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Kent, how are you tonight?
We're doing well, Ian. How about yourself?
I can't hear you, but that might be my fault. There we
You
go.
hear us now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Here we go. How did you like? Oh, you didn't taste our wine, Kent, right? I didn't send you the bottles. I don't want to rub it in.
We did not, so we did a little Gaja.
All right, cool. Bring out the Gaia anytime. Are you drinking Gaia Tuscany or Gaia Piedmont?
Monte.
All right. Cool. Costa Bravo, how do you get that camera to do that?
That's the center stage on the new iPad there. It's quite handy, let me tell you.
That is badass. Did you see that? That looked like a...
Yeah, as soon as someone else walks into the frame, it kind of was like, hey.
Wow,
Here comes Paula now. Oh, there it goes.
All right. I love it. How
Cheers.
Cool. Good to see you both.
Good to see
Indeed.
you.
Lisa Tess, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a Rosso de Montalcino, 2016.
Very nice, very nice. Hector, what did you think of that 14, buddy?
Oh my God, it's amazing. I'm a big cab guy, but this Sangiovese is, rocking my world right now. Amazing.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the style of this 14. I mean, it's definitely more austere, a little lighter in concentration, but really good definition, really nice and pure, and some good energy there. Carlos, how are you?
Doing fine, enjoying the Rosso de Montalcino. I'm looking forward to see you in a personal tasting in the bakery. You used to do it in the past. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know that it's such a challenging time to do those. So we're tipping our toe back in. We do have an Italian wine dinner.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's actually selling very well. The live ticket probably will sell out by next week. If anybody wants to come, we're doing 15 great Italian wines blind with dinner with Sal Marino, one of LA's best Italian chefs. If you want to ever go to Marino, just know that Wednesday night's the hot night. So we move our efforts to Thursday night because Wednesday night he's just insane. He calls it Tomato Wednesdays. And he has like an entire tomato menu. And he's about half of the year I'm vegetarian. And when I'm vegetarian, I eat at Sal's restaurant so often because he is like one of those farmers market savants. He knows where all the good things are kept. He has these relationships with the suppliers, so he just put aside stuff for him. And I was at his restaurant last Wednesday, and the tomatoes were being delivered, and it's just insane what he gets, the quality that he gets. So he picks from the top of the stack, you know. So check out the dinner at Marino with Sal. It's on our Zoom calendar, and the wineries that we're showing off, really, really top brands. It's going to be a lot of fun. Melvin J, maybe you can make it up with your wife for dinner.
We're here, and it's all going well, and we're glad that we could make it tonight. And I assume you're going in the order that it was on your sheet.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I sent you a tasting kit, and so you're in wine number 1.
Yeah.
That's our 14, and we should have just put the labels on there, an afterthought after they were poured. But the 14 is a 1, and 15's 2, 16 will be 3.
Very nice. Very pleased with this. Would not have guessed a Rosso, but beautiful wine.
Yeah, I have some other great 14 Brunello de Montalcino on the website, and they do represent significant value. But I also will tell you, as we're about to taste the 15s and the 16s, the 15s and the 16s are amazing, but they're also like a decade away from being, where they should be to really enjoy them. They need some really serious time. And I really think the 14 is a vintage that you can open up now and enjoy like we are, even though it's, most of us are tasting the tasting kits tonight, and I poured those on Monday. So just think about that. These have been in the little jars for 48 hours. So the bottle's been open for 2 days, and it's drinking this good. That's really also a marker. Will show you how long these wines will age in the bottle. They will age a very long time. I have some kind of smaller. I bought a cellar last year of different pieces from a client, and he had some really old Chablis and some really old wines from the 1990s, and there's still a few left, Brunellos and stuff from very old vintages, and they're really, really fun. I recommend drinking Brunello at the 10-year number, and you can certainly extend it out past that. Let's go into wine number 2. Now, Miss Nardi, I consider her a friend, and I'm sure she would have come on the Zoom if I would have asked her, but it's 10:30 there in Italy. We'll get her on a Zoom in the future. She's really been amazing to us. We visited her. We've had lunch in her home. This is a pretty important family in Brunello de Montalcino. Her husband was an inventive farmer and patented a bunch of farming tools, and that was kind of the secret of their success, their financial success. And he was involved with Biana Santi in the early days as well. So really nice, noble heritage when you start talking about Miss Nardi. And so I'm going to break into her part of the PowerPoint here. And here we go. Wine number 2. Again, Brunello di Montalcino is always 100% Sangiovese. In other areas, they can blend in other grapes. Even in Brunello or even in Montalcino, they can make other wines, but they can't call them Brunello unless they are 100% Sangiovese and aged for 5 years at the winery. Doesn't mean they need to be in wood for 5 years, although I believe if you go back far enough, they used to be. Now it's common that they're about 2 years in oak and 2+ years in bottle, and so that 5-year number still holds true. There's a look at the hillside town, and a look at her operation. Very historic property, really nice exposition, really well run, and she's quite a nice lady. Made a lot of friends when we visited her, and I used to work for the importer that represented her, so I've been able to go out there on a number of occasions, like caves that her wine are stored in, and also all of her farms are farmed in that kind of not quite an biodynamic sensation, but definitely organics are practiced. And we're going to be visiting now the 15 wine from her. And you can just see an immediate change in color. And these thick-skinned wines, they can produce a lot of color, especially in a warm, ripe, hot vintage like 15. Wow, I haven't tasted this wine in at least a year. This was one of our star wines we had at our Stars of Italian Wine, and that was last year. A little bit more wood nuance here. I almost get kind of like a coconut sensation from the wood. Vanilla, custard, and coconut. There's usually a smell, a sensation of some sort of like a steel in the nose. And I think that's a combination of the tannin and the smell of the soils of the place. We have that same kind of sensation in a place like Howe Mountain. You can really smell the minerality. That fruit here is so much more riper and denser. It's a richer experience, creamier, more textured. The vintage is speaking. Also, some of the philosophies of the producer, coaxing out some really nice character there, and super delicious. Kind of a nice, more cooked cherry character. I would say the 14 had kind of a leaner, more classic, old world earth orientation, where this is a little bit more modern fruit orientation, but not overripe. It can't. There are many producers that push the ripeness level and really coaxed an insane amount of concentration from these wines. This is kind of a nice halfway point, and really a pretty wine. Any comments, questions? I see someone's typing in. Hi, David Cam. Yes, Kent, we do have a virtual experience for our Zoom membership, and those that want to join us. We can deliver the food locally, but unless you want to come out and join us, you can watch on Zoom. We'd love to have you. For the dinner, I was talking there. I'm reading the question. Sorry if I didn't frame that very well. There's a question about our dinner, and the live portion will sell out. And we are doing a multimedia type of experience that night. We're going to have a live session, and it's going to be on Zoom. So that's
you're tasting the wines, Ian.
Yeah,
so you can ship the wines.
I can ship, but it would have to be fast.
Okay.
I don't have a bottle set available for that dinner either, and it's 15 bottles, so it would be a pretty big shipment. Okay. But I could probably do a flight out there to get a flight out to you. If we send it out on Monday, got it to you by Wednesday, 2 day, that could work.
Okay, thank you.
You can bet.
Ian, the Sylvanian oak. Tell me a little bit about that. Why not French?
Yeah, so a lot of their cellars have the larger wood, not the small barrique, because they really don't want to give that much oxygen to the wine. They want it to be a nice, slow maturation. And Slovenian oak, French oak are really similar, and they're obviously a little closer to Italy. And they have a nice relationship with Italian wine, so a lot of producers are using the larger Slovenian oak uprights. They're large formats, they don't have a big fingerprint on the wine, and she'll also use some French small demis and blend them together. And she has a higher end version of her Brunello de Montalcino, a single vineyard, that I believe sees more use of French oak in that production.
I have a question. I've been doing a lot of work up in Napa and in Santa Barbara versus the vineyards, and there's a variety of the size of the fruit. I mean, some of them are teeny little berries and grapes. And is there a difference between the size of a Sangiovese? I guess it kind of vary throughout the vintage year. Are they pretty consistent? Are they larger than the Cabernets in the California style? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, I think
this is very fleshy. I feel
there's more exaggerated versions. This is a nice main market wine effort here. She's definitely a high quality Brunello de Montalcino producer. But as you go up the food chain towards $100 and $150 and $250 a bottle for the higher end single vineyard wines, those are going to come for more extreme vineyards with more slope, and smaller berry sizes will result, and that will give you the more elevated concentration, the thicker skins, less juice. Might even use some Saignée and bleed off some of the free run juice and just work on the small amount of the juice and the large amount of the skins to elevate that concentration. They can also Saignée away some of the juice and blend that into the Rosso and do some creative winemaking that way, getting some return on the money, with a little bit of that wine, and then focusing the big dollar stuff, putting it away in the cellar and holding it back for that long duration. And a lot of it's too, where are you when the good vintages are coming along? I remember the Champagne region, 2011, the world was melting down with a recession, and actually the vintage 2008 was being dealt with. 2008 was one of the greatest vintages in Champagne's history, and they're like, wait a second, we're in the middle of an amazing, difficult financial moment, and we've got all this great 2008. What do we do with it? Do we make non-vintage wine from it so that we can sell, or do we go for it and put it into wines like Dom Perignon and Cristal and all the top productions? And luckily they held the course and stayed the course, because those wines have now come out and fetched amazing sums of money and have all been gobbled up. But that's what happens here right now. We're going to have some really challenging times for some of these wineries, and they've got some really big financial decisions to make with their current vintages and past vintages and future vintages, and it's going to really be a challenge. But certainly the vineyards of Brunello to Montalcino area have different capabilities. There's flatlands that produce higher yields. There's hillsides that can really coax out the higher end stuff. Not everything is equal, and in a valley where there's higher elevation, low elevation, valley floor, flatland, you're going to have that type of differential too in the productions of these wines. That's why you'll see a big bulk of the wines somewhere between $50 and $80, and then a small subset start to soar and go into the ultra elite price points. And they're not all from the same type of vineyards. All right,
Are they like some of the areas in France where they've been expanding the quote unquote area that qualifies as Brunello?
Actually not. There's been no further expansion of the area. And I would say the opposite has happened, and we'll talk about that here in just a second with this next wine. Sharing the wrong thing here. Let me share the right thing. There we go. And Agostino Peri is a real classic producer, very much known for restraint. And with that being said, we're moving into a great vintage with a great producer. We move from the 15 to the 16. You have to discount the 16 a little bit because it is a year younger. But the 15 has really come a long way. Down in so pretty, much prettier today. When they're young, they can be very tough because they haven't really integrated yet. So let's taste the 16 together. Let's take a look at this map of Montalcino, and we can see, different areas with different heights. These are all the 400, 200, 100. This is above sea level, so really kind of an undulating set of properties. Some of the property holders are massive. I've met some of the producers have 2,000 hectares, and some of them have 10. So it just depends on where your property is. There's kind of an east, west, north, south argument as to what the best areas are, and so here we could see on this little map here, we had Paniella has La Resina and Solaria, and then you've got this area here, brands like Val de Suga and Casanova de Neri. Some of these sub areas have different types of brands. When you look down the list, a little bit larger brands like Banfi and Il Pogine, down here in the Sant'Angelo. Castiglione del Bosco, one of my favorites, another favorite. La Fuga, by my friend from Nozzoli. Castelgiaconi from Frescobaldi. Pretty nice producers up here. And so as you look, and down here we got the Castelnova dell'Abate. Mr. Perry's property is here, and so we've got a kind of a northwest, south type of an argument tonight as to where you might be located. You've got a couple of other favorites right in the heart of Montalcino, Folanghini, another very elegant producer, really great. Down in La Croce, you've got Bianasanti, and I know that Nardi's got property in a couple different areas here. So this whole diagram kind of shows you the different elements here, and this higher elevation spots, kind of sweet spots that really magnify. And then you've got some really extreme hillsides here with Casanova de Neri, and they're going to make their argument for quality up in the corner there. And my friend Lufuga playing the hillsides here. Even though he's not that high in elevation, he's still really working it and working the extremes that he can. So it's all about the vineyard work, and that'll be the equalizer. But this is all the region that's known as Montalcino. They haven't expanded it at all. There's no plan to expand it, and you can't. And in fact, if it's anything, it's been locked in so hard because the property values have just gone skyrocketing, because this is it. So the producer that we're having today is absolutely dedicated to a very classic style of Brunello, and certainly on the side of restraint inside the category. But the 16 vintage gave us that beautiful dark color, really amazing. This producer's, again, one of those really hyper producers about inane details and quality, and everything being done by hand. Really strict type of farming and practices and harvest. Here's the large wood that we were talking about, their hectare on the left. You can see those bigger barrels, less oxygen, less wood contact, a slower process. And again, it's about 5 years. They have a 5-year production period for these wines. But then you can use like the French oak barrel to like give it a little punch of cream and sugar. And you can go back and forth and blend between the two. And that's what we see here. So let's taste the 16 together. Wow. You know, when I smelt the Nardi, I really got a lot of wood impression. Here I'm getting incredible fruit, and it's quite like a zesty berry, like a blueberry, boysenberry, framboise kind of a smell. But the restraint here, the lack of extraction, a lack of power. I think some people would prefer a bigger punch, and this has got a real gentle press. And this is a much more of a classic, old school producer, and making wines that can be drank a little bit sooner and are very restaurant friendly. If you walked in with a Casanova Danieri to a restaurant to drink it, it would really, be way too young. It would, and even the Nardi wine tonight at 15, it's come a long way and it's really showing pretty well, but it is still big and wooded and may need another few more years to really have that integration show you how good it's going to be. Whereas here, this thing is kind of showing off already. It's really about a pure expression, more of the Sangiovese and less about the wood impression. But I love that nose. It's just so cool. It's so fruit focused. But I do think, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, the tannins seem just super fine here, like very, they're well integrated. They're there, but they're so super fine that it's pretty pleasant actually.
Yeah, I really think that that's part of the brand style. I have also tried the Rosso 19 that they just released, and the Rosso is so good. The price points are vastly different, and I just really think that the style of this producer rewards that early consumption, that go ahead and pop it now type of a thing. But I would love to see what this thing would do with time in the cellar, and I bet that because this thing is a 16er and the fruit concentration is so good and so pure, that those tannins are actually kind of hidden behind that fruit, and over time I think they'll kind of evolve a little bit but they are fairly quiet, very gentle. I sold the 15 from this producer too, and this is a very consistent style from this producer. So really 3 different stories, and they have probably as much to do with philosophy as they do with vintage. If we moved and tasted the 14 from each of these 3 producers, you'd probably really see their fingerprint and the vintage, at the same time. But with La Renaille, we had a producer that's dedicated to making some very long aging, high quality, with their average bottle being over $150 from that producer. They have a lot at stake, and so they're really making when they make a Rosso for $50, they're making something that they still want to have represent their brand. And with Nardi, the 15 Brunello de Montalcino being at approximately $60 price point, it represents the vintage. It's a champion vintage. It's a 95-point wine, a little bit more heft and weight, concentration, power from the wood. And then the 16 here, this one is definitely on the more gentle extraction, maybe a more feminine style of Brunello de Montalcino, but really a champion for the food. It was funny because this came up a conversation, this event tonight came up with Sal at the restaurant, and we were talking about the different producers, and these are the type of producers that he likes to put on his wine list because he wants people to taste his food and experience the classics. And so that's where that's kind of what we were focused on. I was getting his impressions of these Brunellos. Sal's family, obviously Italian. His wife's family owned a winery in Tuscany, and so we were trading tasting notes, and and experiences. But the category that is Brunello de Montalcino has quite an array of styles, as does Bordeaux, as does Napa Cab, as does every category, as does Zinfandel. And so, here we get to see some different personalities putting their fingerprint on a really important wine in the wine world. The wines are available on the Merchant of Wine if you liked any of them. Everybody that participating in the Zoom tonight got a discount code to be able to purchase any of the wines, get an additional 10% off on anything in our Italian wine department tonight. Those of you that are watching this on Facebook or in the future, we thank you for watching our program. We do host our Zooms every Wednesday, and we have published our calendar out through the next 2 months. We have 3 very important STARS events that occur in the next 2 months. The one that we're going to announce tomorrow, we announced our September program. At the end of September, we're bringing together New Zealand, Australia, and California for a really fun kind of versus tasting. We're going to have 2 wines from each country, top producers like Saracen. Mrs. Saracen is actually going to be on our Zoom with us for STARS. And then we have Mary Edwards talking Sauvignon Blanc with Saracen. That's going to be super cool. And then we'll taste a top cool small producer of Syrah from the Napa Valley named Kale. And Kale is going to offset our Australian Shiraz. And then we'll have some New Zealand Pinot and some Australian Chardonnay from the Lewin estate. And all these folks will be on the Zoom. That's what our STARS events are all about. So check out the STARS of New Zealand, Australia, and California. It's kind of a versus tasting. That's our September Zoom. And we're going to do the same type of thing with Argentina, Chile, and California in October. And then we'll finish October with the STARS of Merlot, which is not an event that we had calendared, but October is Merlot month. And the folks at Duckhorn have a big push in making sure people don't forget about Merlot. So we got some of the best Merlot producers possible because Duckhorn invited them all and really made this event happen. So the STARS of Merlot is a little bit ridiculous. Check it out. It's on the calendar now. It's up for sale. All these STARS flights start off around $30 to taste the wine. And then they go up in price as the events get closer. So jump on them early, grab a tasting kit, and join us. Or grab a bottle kit because I think the New Zealand, Australia, California tasting, the 6 bottles is worth $300, and we have it right now at $180. So it's a very strong value proposition to join us at that level. Get in the 6 bottles and dive into them. Merlot kind of does the exact same thing, although one of the Merlots is $250 for the bottle. So you might want to check that out too. And then the same thing with our Argentina tasting. We're not messing around. We got some of the best producers from each of those areas getting on board, and they're bringing some serious wines. We do tend to have kind of an expectation that the wines won't be a $10 bottle. So we're always looking for better examples, and they tend to cost a little bit more.
You're bringing in a 3 Palms, are you, in that Merlot?
No, the Merlot from Duckhorn. I'm not even sure which Duckhorn Merlot we're going to be tasting, but the wine that we're going to be able to taste that's $250 is the Sullivan Estate.
Ooh.
And it's 98 points, and it's a beast. But what I love about working with Sullivan is whenever they're going to do an event, they always want to show their best wine. And that's the difference between them and a marketing company. The marketing companies always want to show the wine that they have a lot to sell. So we'll see what Duckhorn brings us. But the event is looking really good, and it's already sold quite a few. It may be ironically, if the sales velocity is any early indicator, it may be the first Stars event that we sell out. So that'll be cool.
I only brought that out because I had the privilege some years ago to attend a Duckhorn dinner in which he brought out some old ones, some newer ones, and this and that. But it was Dan Duckhorn himself did it.
Oh, that's cool. That was the end of an era. I was sitting in the theater, the movie theater, when Dan Duckhorn watched the movie Sideways, and we saw him exit the theater when he started drinking NEF and Merlot. That's when he departed the room. So I was working at promoting it to the wine industry for Fox at that time, and it was an amazing journey, and that was one of the great stories out of that whole adventures. And there was thought, though, that Dan was actually in the middle of getting a divorce in 2004 when that movie came out, and it was not because he said we ain't drinking any effort in Merlot, but because his lawyer called during the movie. So that was the response that we got.
Ian, when are you doing Rome?
When am I doing Rhone?
Yes.
All right. Well, Rhone is scheduled for January.
Great.
And we do have our Rhone Wars that we do every year. That'll be coming up too. Who knows? We might have something in between here and there. We did just do a couple of little tastings, kind of the south of France. We went from wines just outside of Châteauneuf-du-Pape down along the south of France. But man, I'm really excited about something that's not on the calendar yet. I just want to put it out to this group here. We just got hooked up with Paul Hobbs. He's going to be doing a Zoom with us in December, and I am so excited to taste some of the wines that we're going to be tasting with him. He is adventuring into wine regions all over the world. You know, he's got his Los Cobos property down in Argentina. He's obviously a phenomenal Napa Valley producer, but he's also partnered up in Armenia making wines, and in the Finger Lakes of New York. And he is a killer Pinot Noir producer as well. So we're going to show some really cool sides of Paul Hobbs. We're going to get him on the Zoom personally and be able to spend some time with him. An absolute legend. That'll be in the middle of December on the 15th. So you want to plan into that. Yeah, that'll be super cool. And those are the type of things that we're going to try to go out on at the end of the year on, are really top events like that. So thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed. And remember that we, in the state of California, we ship for $10. And outside of California, we keep the pricing at our costs. I haven't priced any shipping to you yet, Kent. But I know it can get a little expensive, but our 10% off sometimes cuts that down pretty well. When you get to 12 bottles, you automatically get that 10% off. And tonight, you get 10% off on anything you buy from Italy. So thanks for joining us, guys. Setsuko in Japan, always good to have you on the Zoom. Stacy Kincaid, good to see your name. David Cam, same with you. And to the rest of you, have a good night, everybody. We hope to talk to you soon, and thanks for tasting Brunello with me.
Good night.
Ciao.
Thanks, Ian.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.
Ciao, bello.
Ciao.